June Benjamin Loggins, school teacher, kindergarten director, devoted wife and mother, spent most of her life in East Point, Georgia, but her story begins on the opposite side of the country, in Bellingham, Washington. On May 3, 1923, she was born to former school teacher Lyda Stone Benjamin and World War I veteran Milford Lewis Benjamin. 4 years later, her younger brother Keith came along, her only sibling. She graduated from high school in 1941 and went on to study education in college.
But I always wanted to be a teacher from the time I was a little girl. And I went to the same, it's interesting, I always thought that I went to the same college that my mother went to. I was real proud, and I didn't want to ask for anything. And when I went to college, Daddy gave me some money when I started, you know. It cost $21, the tuition for the first quarter. And I had to get books, see, after that. And most of the books I bought were secondhand books, or you rented them from somebody. But I needed a little more money, and I asked him for it, and he said, well, I thought I just gave you $20. And, of course, he had, but it hadn't been enough, and I was really hurt, you know. So I decided from then on I would never ask him for any more money, and I never did.
The teacher shortage at that time brought June her own group of second graders, and she settled into the busy life of one who was both student and teacher. But she still had a social life, and during this period she would come in contact with a young soldier from Georgia, one Emory Gilbert Loggins, who would change her life forever.
The first time I saw him, I went to church, and I was late because I had took the bus from Tenino up there, and it was late getting in time, and church had already started, and I went and sat in the back, and I could see the back of this boy's head up where he's from. I thought he was the cutest thing I'd ever seen.
From the back of his head?
Yeah. He had curly hair. Blonde, kind of strawberry blonde hair, you know. So it had a hint of red in it.
Yeah.
And hair up there, and I just thought he was so cute from the back. And in February, George Washington's birthday was a holiday, and he came up to, we were already real interested in each other then. That was only 4 weeks later, really. Mm-hmm. Because he went out, that's where my folks met him. The first time they ever saw him was when we went home. And the only time they ever saw him until we decided to get married. See, he shipped overseas the 21st of March, Tuesday the 21st of March. He was gone. And we had already made up our minds, you know, we wanted to get married even before that.
He returned to June one very long year after he left.
And he stayed then. He got a job, a civilian job at Fort Lewis, and worked through April and May, and then we got married 1st of June. And, that was exciting days. We got married on Monday, and we were married on June the 3rd, my folks' wedding anniversary. And we stayed that summer, and I went to school, and he worked with my daddy on the ranch, farm out there. And then we left to come down here in the middle of August. And then, as I say, it worked out well that way, because my folks, see, they really didn't know him.
Yeah.
Because, Daddy'd only seen him that George Washington Day there, that one time. And then the next time they saw him was the weekend we got married. And my dad said when we left, he said, if you ever have any trouble and you have to come home, he said, you can come home, but I'm not giving you money to go back with. And he said, and besides that, I'll know whose fault it is. If I had any troubles, it was going to be my fault. Because they didn't think Gilbert, you know, they liked him, and he, you know how Daddy was.
She left her childhood home to join her new husband in a new life in the strange and exotic Southland and become part of a new family.
The whole family was so different than what I was used to. You know, there were so many of them, and I just wasn't used to that. It's such a big family, really. But I did like it. I liked the big family.
At first they lived with Gilbert's brother and sister-in-law, Willie Say and Elizabeth.
Handyman Gilbert built a small room for the two of them on the back of the apartment. And that was where the two became three. His name was Emory Gilbert Loggins III, but they called him Butch. They moved to a tiny house at 2390 Lumpkin Street in East Point. The couple found a church home at East Point First Baptist, where they developed a circle of friends who would remain loyal to them for many years to come.
When I had Butch, I wanted to be so sure that he was perfect. He was going to be perfect. And I wanted everything, everything to be perfect for him. And I wanted him to behave perfectly and all this. And when you came along, there was really no question. You were like Mr. Personality. You just grinned all over the place and did what you wanted to and just smiled, and everybody, it was real funny. Everybody would say, "Oh, isn't he cute?" And he'd have that smile, and that was it. But then when Roger came along, Roger was real. He had a good temper. I mean, he could get really peeved. I guess that was the red hair. He really could, but he didn't very often. He was usually pretty good-natured. He was a real sympathetic-natured child, Roger was. I remember him patting me on the stomach when I was pregnant with David and saying, "You'll be all right, Mama, you'll be all right," He was just real sympathetic about everything. I don't know, David just seemed like David was David. I don't remember him getting into so much trouble, but yet he did from time to time. Of course, I guess everybody did from time to time.
And 4 years later, in 1960, came the last little boy, Doug. That's me.
You were the angel of the crowd. I mean, you never did. You just walked around and smiled all the time, and
we were cutting up and playing.
Yeah, and he was always, he did a lot of things early. You all thought he was so smart. He'd go around saying he was smarter than Sally Ann. Remember Sally Ann Fox?
So in 1961, there were June, Gilbert, and 5 boys around the dinner table every evening, ranging from ages 1 to 14. Not long after returning from the first car trip out west, Gilbert fell out of a pecan tree and landed in the hospital with a broken pelvic bone.
I took everybody to see him. All the boys got to have one turn to go see him. Everybody except you, and you were too little. But Roger was so serious-minded about that place. He couldn't get over the chapel at the hospital. He wanted to go down and see the chapel at the hospital, which I thought was rather ironic. But because, of course, it wasn't very many days before he was gone then.
The very next month, Roger was hit by a car while riding his bike not far from home. He passed away 4 days later, the morning of December 4th, 1961. He was 8.5 years old. But she still had 4 sons who required as much attention as ever. And then the next year, a special request came from their church, the East Point First Baptist, to start a kindergarten program. Based on her expertise as a Sunday school teacher, they wanted her to be the director.
I started with 3 students. Then the next year I had about 16 the next year, 5-year-olds. From then on it just kept growing.
For some time now, June's parents had been avoiding the harsh northwestern winters by spending half the year in Arizona. That's where they were in February 1969 when June's father passed away unexpectedly at a picnic. June was unable at the time to leave her family and attend the funeral or help her mother, but a few months later, Lida was able to come visit June. So she was there on June 7th when Ben married his high school sweetheart, Teresa Morris, in a small ceremony in the pastor's study at First Baptist. At 20, they may have seemed rather young, but Ben and Teresa had done so much preparation for married life, it was impossible for anyone to object. In August that same year, Butch returned to civilian life. The Army not only fostered Butch's skills as an auto mechanic, but also gave him a self-confidence unknown to him in early life. He lived at home a few months and then into an apartment, and then he met and married Thurla Roan early in 1971. It was a surprising contrast to the thorough preparation of Ben's marriage. The announcement was made 1 week before the wedding.
Yeah, that was a real big shock when he announced to me that he was going to get married. That was a real shock because he hadn't gone with Thurl but a short period of time.
But truth be told, June and Gilbert had not been together much longer themselves when they were married. Also, like June and Gilbert, it wasn't long before Butch and Thurl had a little one of their own. June's first grandchild was named for his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Emery Gilbert Loggins IV, a cumbersome moniker mercifully shortened to simply Gil. In 1977, a second grandchild came into the picture. Gil's younger brother, Matt, was born on his father's birthday, February 19th. Tragically, though, when Matt was 8 months old, Butch passed away. He was hit by a tractor-trailer while putting a car onto a tow truck beside a highway. In 1978, the youngest son, Doug, graduated from high school and began college. June had retired from kindergarten teaching a year earlier, but with the nest now empty and Gilbert often busy with a variety of repair jobs, she went back to work in 1980. She returned to direct the kindergarten program and serve as a kind of floating substitute teacher. Their 50th anniversary in 1996 was celebrated with much fanfare at the East Point First Baptist. Many relatives and longtime friends joined in the joy of their lifetime together.
Then, in 1999,
just 3 days after their 53rd anniversary, Gilbert passed away, lying next to June one Wednesday morning in the bed they'd shared for so many years. For a while she stayed with David and Kay in Canton. Then finally she came to live at Carestone Managed Care Facilities near Ben in Jonesboro, where she has made many friends among the other tenants there. Sometimes she misses the life she left behind, but still thankful for what she has. The main thing she's always wanted is for her children to be happy. She feels a certain amount of pride when she looks back on her life.
Real proud of the fact that I had 5 sons. I was real proud of that. Sometimes wondered maybe I was too proud. Maybe that was why I didn't get to keep all of them. But that was that is what I figure is my greatest accomplishment is my sons.
And we are proud of you too, Mom. Thank you for all that you've given us.